We're live in just a moment to our Dubai desk. Alec Engineering and Contracting is one of the largest construction companies with a major footprint in the UAE, and they've been consistently evolving and growing over the last 2 decades. They've become a trusted partner for the execution of complex and iconic construction projects, which include over 20 expo pavilions. For more on the story, let's touch base with my colleague Ayanda Nyathi, who is live to us there from Dubai. And Ayanda, great to see you as always. I mean, iconic construction projects, that certainly is something that does come top of mind when you think of Dubai in particular.
I've been stressing, Michelle, just how mind-blowing some of the architecture is here at Expo 2020 Dubai. And it's such a great and a pleasant surprise to learn that a great deal of that construction is actually put together by a company led in part by South Africans. And so we're taking this moment really to hone in on what it takes to pull that off in a context where, one, the conditions in Dubai are not necessarily, at least insofar as some people are concerned, conducive to building, especially these large, massive construction or infrastructure. But two, I mean, Dubai is in the Middle East, and you don't think that something as big as the Expo 2020 would attract people from where you and I are from. And that's why it gives me great pleasure to bring in Guest Taylor, who is the CEO of Alec Engineering and Contracting. And it's great to see you, sir. Thanks so much for seeing it to Newzroom Afrika.
Thank you, Ayanda.
I've been at pains to explain just how, A, fantastic the buildings here are, but B, how a lot of those infrastructure actually come from companies that are run by South Africans. You're the head of one of such company. Tell us a bit more about where things started and how you got involved with Expo 2020.
Okay, so we've been involved here right from day one, and we've been here right the way through to the end. We've been fortunate enough to be involved in 23 of some of them the major projects here, of which the first one you saw behind you was the UAE pavilion. And that's been designed by an architect called Santiago Calatrava. He's one of the world-class architects around the world. And we were fortunate enough to be involved in that one over there. But generally it's been a fantastic development to be part of. I think we've played a major role here with our teams. And yeah, we finished all of the projects on the deadline.
The deadline, which I understand was the 1st of October. I imagine everybody breathing a sigh of relief on that day. But help us place just how involved you were here at Expo 2020. I mean, we understand you're involved in about 23% of the projects. That's huge.
Yeah, so 23 projects we were involved with. I think, you know, the one that you can see behind us here is the Saudi pavilion. You know, I think all of these projects are complex in their nature. They need amazing teams that have to work together. And at the end of the day, you're creating an amazing end product. So, yeah, I think it's been a great experience for everyone.
Yeah. And what was the briefing that you got when you were asked to be involved in these 23 projects? And not 23%, that's a big difference.
Yeah.
These 23 projects. I mean, you obviously had meetings in the lead up to this point. Did you understand the scale of what you had to put together at that time?
Yeah, I think we understood how complicated they were. We felt that we had the necessary skills that we could pull them all off. Yeah, I think, you know, I think we were selected on a lot of these projects because of our track record of the work that we've done here over the last 20 years.
Yeah. Every South African I meet, part of what starts any conversation off is how hot Dubai is. Yeah. You and I had that moment off air. It does bring to question, though, how easy it is to build in these conditions, especially because of the hours you need to put in and sometimes just how heavy some of the equipment, infrastructure, et cetera, is.
Yeah, so we work a lot at night here because the conditions are a lot better. And the majority of our 11,000 workforce, the majority of them come from India. And India is a very hot climate as well, so it's not foreign to them. So they're actually suited to the conditions. But it is quite a tough environment, but you do get used to it, and it does get easier over time.
Yeah. Are you finding that South Africans typically do well in business here in Dubai? I mean, you've been able to be involved in at such a grand scale on this world stage. What's your reading of how easy it is to do business as a South African in the UAE?
Look, I think South Africans have a lot of amazing qualities and skills, especially the South Africans who demonstrate those traits. So I think we're hardworking, I think we're committed, we're driven, we want to succeed. We work very well with different cultures, and I think we are a nation that likes to win.
Right. Right, absolutely. Even on the sports field, even though that doesn't necessarily always go our way, right? But let's speak about what you know will happen to this infrastructure afterwards. I mean, typically, yes, construction companies are brought in just to build the buildings, and that's where your involvement ends. But I'm sure in those discussions there was some kind of conversation about what happens, for instance, to the Saudi Arabia building after March.
Yeah, so the Saudi Arabian building, the one behind us, is going to be gifted to the UAE. It's actually a magnificent building. Yeah. So, I mean, you can't actually dismantle something like that. But there's a whole legacy plan for this. You know, there's direct metro links, 16 billion dirhams, which you can equate into rands is, you know, it's times 4. So there's been a massive investment in the infrastructure, and this is going to become a growth area and a growth zone for Dubai moving into the future. Yeah. And I think yeah, they also got plans for it to be a university, exhibition centres, offices are going to be so yeah, but it's an amazing facility, as you can see. Absolutely. It's actually the same size as Monaco, this expo, so it's quite big.
Yeah, yeah, you don't need to tell me that. We've been walking around all the time, panting for breath. You speak about some of the costs involved, for instance, with the Saudi Arabia building. Are you able to quantify for us how much it costs, at least for the projects you're involved in, to put the infrastructure up?
Yeah, so the projects that we were involved in are worth approximately $1 billion, collectively between the 23 projects that we've been involved with.
Yeah, yeah.
And then, and overall, I mean, on infrastructure, yeah, they spent about 16 billion, and on the rest of the facilities, I'm actually not sure what that number is.
Right. Fair enough. The deadline was the 1st of October to get it all done, but how long did it take you to build it? Keeping in mind, of course, that things did have to stop at some stage because of COVID-19.
Yeah, so it varied on the various projects. But I mean, typical duration for a project like the UAE pavilion now that we had to finish off, I mean, we had to finish that off in 8 months. So, I mean, that took like 24-hour shifts, 7 days a week. It took quite an effort to get that across the line.
Right, right. And the involvement, obviously, at Expo is a pretty big deal. What other infrastructure in Dubai have you been able to put up? Because I know you've also been involved with those projects too.
Yeah, so we were fortunate. Approximately half of Dubai Airport is being constructed by Alec, so we've been heavily involved in that. And yeah, we've been involved in a lot of resort hotels, a lot of shopping centres, and yeah, those kind of projects.
Fantastic stuff. And what's next? Any idea yet?
Look, we are expanding into Saudi Arabia. There's a massive rollout. Saudi Arabia is a massive country. It's a lot bigger than the UAE, and it's got a big population of about 30 million people. And under the new leadership there of Mohammed bin Salman, they have bold ambitions for the country moving into the future. So there's going to be a lot of work in Saudi Arabia. We're also working in Qatar, Ethiopia, and then Abu Dhabi and Dubai.
Fantastic. Okay, the stuff you've been able to put together is absolutely mind-blowing. Thank you so much for speaking to us. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Ayanda.
All right, awesome. There you have it. Kes Taylor, CEO of Alec Construction and Engineering, led by South Africans with a huge footprint here in Dubai. As you've heard there, 23 projects here, and it sounds perhaps like it's not much, but if you are able to look at the scale of the buildings they were able to put together, I think you'll appreciate too, Michelle, that it's absolutely a feat at the very least. And it's interesting to also consider what happens afterwards, as mentioned before. I mean, a lot of some of the buildings that have been put together have been constructed with sustainability in mind as well. That gives you a sense that, if anything, at least the buildings themselves have a longevity in their own construction, in the ways through which they were initially put together.
Yeah, absolutely. Very interesting to hear, and I suppose it makes sense, doesn't it, that construction happens mostly at night, given the climate in many parts of the UAE. Ayanda, one wonders whether you should have been doing your crossings at night.
Sweat on my forehead, and that's part of the reason why you need to do a lot of the labor, the heavy lifting, quite literally, after the sun sets. It's because in some instances it becomes untenable. In fact, Kia's telling us off air that at the very height or at the peak of the heat, they need to take about 3 hours of a break because, you know, I imagine it's just, yeah, it's a situation that no human really can survive. At the moment, it's about 34 degrees. It's 8:30 there in Johannesburg and 10:30 here, and already you can get a sense of how hot it has become.